ancient history, as many believe Akhenaten was also called Moses, another Egyptian prince who believed in a single deity above all others, and like Akhenaten, was forced to flee Egypt with his family and like-minded followers from the ancient land of gods. We'll explore that aspect of Akhenaten's legacy at another time. For now, we'll concentrate on the efforts to convert the ancient world of its many pantheons, whether in the Bronze Age Egypt or in Iron Age Europa. Most are familiar with the latter Judeo-Christian world born from Rome's embracing of Christianity, with Constantine's so-called conversion at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 AD. Whether Constantine's faith in Christianity was genuine, or a politically expedient means to connect to the Roman masses, who were also abandoning the heavy taxation imposed on them by the many gods, and their many temple priests eager to collect their hard-earned coins, Constantine would outlaw the persecution of Christians under his rule, and the nearly 300-year-old faith would flourish under his reign. Christianity would continue its westward spread into modern-day Europe, introducing the one God as the alternative to the many so-called pagan gods who ruled the world before the world heard of Jesus Christ. The word was spread, and those who chose to believe it did, whilst those who did not remained loyal to their old gods. From the 4th century to the 7th century, Christian missionaries proselytized throughout the region known as modern-day Germany. One of those missionaries was the Catholic priest Winfrid, also known as Boniface, the Christian martyr. Pope Gregory II had ordered Boniface to Germania to complete the cultural conversion of the warrior god people. In the very heart of Germany, at its center, is the Hesse region. That 1,000 years in Boniface's future would see the birth of a young America's Teutonic foes, the Hessian mercenaries, who fought alongside King George III of England's Red Coat Army. In a region then known as Geismar, and a town now called Fritzlar, Boniface would encounter stalwart tribesmen committed to their ancient Hall of Gods. In Geismar stood the mighty Donar Oak. Donar was the red-haired, red-bearded, axe-swinging thunder god of the German people. The Thunderer enjoys fame today as the hammer-swinging superhero Thor, Donar as known by the Norwegian Viking people. In order to convince the stubborn tribesfolk to reject Donar and his fellow Germanic deities, Boniface, the humble and yet haughty in his righteousness, would challenge Donar to strike him down. But Boniface wouldn't just make it an idle taunt. He'd put teeth into his wager and the ultimate skin in the game as part of his gambit. The Donar Oak was the earthly representation of Donar's own power and strength above his fellow gods, mankind, and the storms from heaven. Boniface would challenge Donar to strike him down as he would chop down the thunder god's own oak tree. The people of Geismar must have thought the robed Roman acolyte was mad, and that he would be on the receiving end of an angry thunderbolt hurled from on high. Boniface, with the assistance of his fellow missionaries, cut enough of a knock in the Donar Oak that, as legend has it, a sudden wind snatched the tree and shattered it into 4 pieces as it crashed to the ground. Much to the surprise of the German townsfolk, Boniface did not join the tree, as mighty Donar had no response to this outrageous act. Their all-powerful god was powerless in the face of this awesome act of bravery committed by the devotee to the one god. To these 8th century tribesmen, a powerless god was a god too easy to ignore, so they converted to Christianity. The modern German people, now being long committed to Christ, where nearly 70% of Germans are Christians, few even able to recount their ancient ancestors' tales of Donar, his father Wotan, or his evil half-brother Loka. The ancient ones are nearly forgotten, save for the children who read the dusty books on their school library shelves, or when your favorite comic book author needs a doppelganger villain to fight the famous Asgardian cinema star. Neutered by a felled tree, Donar is forgotten, as are the many who prayed and sacrificed so much to him. The war god still holds no sway after more than a millennia to muster the courage to respond to a lowly human monk. Europe's other gods of thunder, steel, and battle are also gone, replaced by a lamb, as declared by Constantine in Hoc Signo Vinces. In this sign of the cross, Christianity did indeed conquer the old pantheons. In the city of Mecca al-Hajiz in Saudi Arabia stands the Al-Masjid al-Haram Mosque. In the center of the mosque is a structure called the Kaaba, the cube. The cube is considered to be the house of Allah, It is the site where the pedophile rapist warlord Muhammad smashed the 360 pagan finger brackets, gods, who protected the ancient Semitic nomads, taking away their power with the exaltation, truth has come, falsehood has vanished, as stated in Book 59 of Hadith 583. What Muhammad understood was the psychological effect of destroying a god in front of a devoted people. When a devoted people see that their god is powerless, they reject that god, and thus the ancient Semites of Saudi Arabia, like the ancient Germans in Germania, forgot their old gods and embraced the new god. Now, the Christian God was not as brutal as the Mohammedan God. You did not risk your life when you sinned against the Mohammedan God. In such a degree, you did risk your soul. That was an aftermath kind of thing. So what that did was it encouraged you to be a better human being on earth, that you would hopefully be rewarded in your proposed afterlife. The Mohammedan culture has no equal value. To them, being a brutal savage, just like their warlord idol, Muhammad, is the ultimate representation of the ultimate man. Their Übermensch, if you will, their Zarathustra, a rapist of children. Despicable. In this modern day, you do not wake up or read a newspaper or turn on the television or speak to a friend or go to a mall without hearing about or thinking about or experiencing Islamo-terrorism. Now, we are told and we are lectured to that we must be tolerant of this group of people, and we must be tolerant of this doctrine of conquest. But what I say is, we have tried. The world has tried for 1400 years to negotiate some sort of peace with the Mohammedan world. And that, as you turn on the news and they're still doing chalk outlines in Istanbul, where another 40 plus people have been gunned down by Muslim terrorists, what we need to do is, we cannot stop these acts of terror as long as these terrorists have something with which to focus their rage. The focus of their rage is a book. It was a series of books. It is the Quran, it is the Hadith, and it is the Surah. These three books, this ideology of conquest, is well defined, and it is a back and forth battle. Well, don't read this book, read that book, don't read that book, read this book, and this book doesn't mean this book because Muhammad didn't write that one, he read this one, and he wrote that one, but he didn't read this one. So what it is a shell game of nonsense. But as long as the Arabs still have a center of power with which their God has a seat, like the Donar Oak here at the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia, where all Muslim males must do their Hajj, a pilgrimage to the sacred city, where they will scurry around this construct, the Kaaba, like insects, or like flotsam or jetsam, circling a drain. It is my proposal that we apologize to the Thunder God, and we implement the newest incarnation of his power, a kinetic weapon bombardment.
Actually designed for a space weapon that could create the spectacle witnesses saw in the skies above Utah and Nevada. Its name is Thor.
One of the first things you learn about space and war, take the high ground, boy, or they'll kick hell out of you in the valley. And that's just an extension of that, take the high ground.
Jerry Pournelle is most famous for writing amazing science fiction, but he has an interesting past.
Before Jerry Pournelle became a famous sci-fi writer, he was working at Boeing in the 50s, and this notion of Project Thor was one of his ideas.
Project Thor. Like the hammer of the god, it's a simple but devastatingly effective concept.
You take about say a 20-foot chunk of a telephone pole made out of high tungsten steel, and you put GPS receiver in it. You put that sucker into orbit, and there isn't any target on Earth I can't destroy with it.
Project Thor is an idea for a weapon system that launches kinetic projectiles from Earth's orbit to damage targets on the ground. Jerry Purnell, the science fiction writer, originated the concept while working in operations research at Boeing in the 1950s. The system is described as an orbiting tungsten telephone pole with small fins and a computer at the back for guidance. The system is described in a 2003 United States Air Force report that a 20-foot long, 6.1 meter, 1 foot in diameter, tungsten rod that are satellite controlled have global strike capability with impact speeds of Mach 10. The SALT Treaty of 1979 prohibited the deployment of orbital weapons of mass destruction. It did not prohibit the deployment of conventional weapons. The system is not prohibited by either the Outer Space Treaty or the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. As per the 2003 Air Force report, a 6.1 meter, 0.3 meter in diameter tungsten cylinder impacting at Mach 10 has a kinetic energy equivalent to approximately 11.5 tons of TNT, 7.2 tons of dynamite. By comparison, the little boy atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, exploded with an energy amount of about 15 kilotons of TNT. The atomic bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945, expressed about 20 kilotons of TNT energy. Now I choose kinetic weapon bombardment because kinetic weapon bombardment provides plausible deniability. Meteors fall from the sky all the time, Habib. Sorry that it happened, Muhammad. But you know what? It's going to neuter Islam, once and for all. The 1.5 billion Muslims that the cowards of the West, the so-called leaders, who are leading us like sheep to slaughter, are afraid to confront. The solution is very simple. A kinetic weapon bombardment. You apologize to the god Thor, you apologize to Donar, and you let him throw his hammer one time. And with the strategic placement of that tungsten Mjolnir, we will vaporize a cancer, excising it from the human body, removing it from Earth itself, the way you would a tumor. And with it, we will remove the focus of this psychopathic, degenerate ideology of conquest. If you use a nuke, nukes have radiation. If you use conventional weaponry leaves residue. Explosive discharges, shrapnel, little things that say made in USA, registration tags, these type things. But a steel rod launched from 20 miles in the sky, impacting the Kaaba, impacting Mecca, would remove from us a problem that has beset humankind for 1400 years. Now once this object is removed, Allah, like Donar, his power is gone. He has nothing. He means nothing. And 1.5 billion people now have a reason to watch MTV, to go to the mall, to read a book with pictures in it, to draw pictures of religious leaders, to tell jokes, to allow their daughters to date men whom they choose, to not sodomize children, to not spend their lives in an ethical and moral sewer known as Islam. Within 10 years, that plague, that cancer, will be gone. 10 years. All it takes is one 20-foot pole of tungsten. I know there are many out there who are thinking, oh my gosh, Jim Dynamo just suggested we vaporize a city. That's right. I did. I've suggested this for many, many years, long before the pestilence that is Islam has become the thorn in our side that it is today. But here, there's no reason that you should be upset. Because by doing this, all we are doing is following Muhammad's own word, as stated in Book 59 of Hadith 583. Truth has come, and falsehood has vanished. So by dropping Thor's hammer on Mecca, all we are doing is acting like good Mohammedans ourselves. Lastly, you social justice warrior types, you have nothing to complain about. Just consider all the residents of Mecca aborted. like the millions of American children